We will talk about different tax regimes, and I'd say the most popular ones and the newest ones.
Even if I'm Italian and I write daily about these topics, I was highly surprised to find all these benefits coming from Italy.
Italy is like among the best regimes.
If you are very rich, actually, there is a specific flat tax for you, which right now is going to require 200K per year plus 25K per additional family member. And you are going to pay 0% universally on all foreign income.
Many of our viewers will get interested in Italy.
So my key message for you is that if you have been considering Italy for a long time, it's better to be 3 days earlier than 1 day late.
This conversation is going to be in English, but obviously we have Ukrainian and subtitles in other languages. We will talk about different tax regimes, and I'd say the most popular ones and the newest ones. And I invited to talk about this Alessandro Palombo, whose newsletter I am reading and a big fan. Alessandro, please say a few words about you and what you're doing.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. My voice is going to be a bit low today because of some sore throat, so sorry for that. So as Lyubomir was mentioning, my name is Alessandro, I'm Italian. My background is legal, so I qualified initially as a lawyer. I began my career in the academic field with a PhD, and then I built a few startups and companies. And right now, we launched successfully and raised over 25 million with a Bitcoin-aligned fund in Portugal, offering Golden Visa, and my other company deals with the global relocation and AI-based tax advisory. And yeah, as Lyubomir was mentioning, I'm quite active in writing every week a newsletter about global living. My goal is a bit simplifying global living at this stage. I kind of have a tech background, so sometimes when I think of these strategies, my ideal persona is someone a bit digital-oriented. But at this point, I interact with so many different type of people. So happy to be of help for you at my best.
Yeah, I like that term, global living. That's actually about Ukrainians now. There's so many of them, millions in Europe and hundreds of thousands around the globe. So we will talk today about the different, I'd say the best tax regimes. And of course, you mentioned Bitcoin. When people hear Bitcoin, they want to hear about Bitcoin. So dear viewers, our conversation not about Bitcoin, but if you watch it till the end, there should be some very interesting news about Bitcoin funds and investments. But Alessandro, you're Italian, and I watch football. Italy, obviously, one of the best 4 times World Cup champions. And I remember 2021, nobody expected Italy to win that Euro. I remember the final match and England played Italy. Everybody was betting on England. Italy won. Great team. And big surprise. If we talk about taxes now, the Euro Championship for taxes, is it a similar story that nobody expected Italy to be on the top in the final? And now with this fixed regime and 7% rules, Italy is like among the best regimes. Can you tell us more about those things?
Absolutely. I would like to, begin saying that I didn't expect either. And even if I'm Italian and I write daily about these topics, I was highly surprised to find all these benefits coming from Italy. And what I realized in writing online quite extensively about these topics is that they are quite underrated, because maybe if you're listening these, you may be aware of, well, there can be some tax optimization opportunities in Portugal, there can be some opportunities in Cyprus, and so far and so on, for example, Malta. Usually in these conversations, Italy never appears. But actually, Italy right now, if we look at the data and at the existing exemption regimes, it's an amazing opportunity. Why? So there are a few different regimes, depending on who you are, that could be a fit for you. First and foremost, if you want to move to Italy and you haven't been living or resident in Italy for a few years before the day you move, you can actually successfully qualify for the repatriated regime, which means that you're going to pay to receive a tax exemption of 50% on your income for 5 years. In this overall explanation, Lubomir, I'm going, if you agree, a bit high level. I'm not going too much into the details. Sorry, it would be a bit boring. But ideally, let's say that you move to Italy. If you have a degree or at least a comparable professional qualification, you can, for 5 years, get 50%, and if you have a kid, 60% tax exemption regime. What does it mean in practice? In practice, it means that you're going to pay at least for what concerns specifically taxes on personal income, about 10, 11%. It depends on a few additional elements. This is a good opportunity. Always remember that on top of it, you need to pay for Social Security, and there are a few other nuances. But of course, Italy is not a tax haven, but in my view, even if you want to work remotely for a foreign company and you issue invoices from Italy as a freelancer, well, this structure, in my view, could be a very valuable one. And to be frank, I think in many, including Italians, found this opportunity incredible, and that's why over 100,000 people apparently in the last few years benefited from this special regime. This is actually ideal for a broader category of people. And maybe you're listening, you may be in your 30s, in your 40s, you may have kids, you may not have kids. Well, this could be an additional incentive to move to Italy. As always, I say, life is not a tax return. So in the end, in my view, it's not very conclusive to base all your decisions on eventually tax optimization. But I think this element should be one of a few factors that you are going to consider when you have to define your personal life and family strategy. So this is one regime.
I must admit, that on other criteria, Italy usually wins, like quality of life, quality of food, a lot of other things where Italy at the top. So tax was usually on the minus side. Now it seems the tax is on the advantage side too.
100%. And when it comes to lifestyle, I would like to spend a few words later because on this element, so I've been living abroad for 10 years. So I left Italy relatively young for building startups and also because, to be frank, Italy, especially 10 years ago, wasn't the right place to build tech companies. And to be frank, I don't think it's even now the right place to build eventually tech companies. But if you have your foreign business or you can work remotely, I think right now there can be incredible opportunities, such as, for example, living in the south of Italy. So I will get there maybe in a bit, but in my view, the right opportunity, if you can work remotely, is to consider not really maybe Milan, not necessarily Rome, but eventually southern regions with a lower cost of life, a better lifestyle, incredible food. And yeah, maybe the services will require a bit more your proactive eventually effort to find the right services in the right timing, but you're going to gain quite a lot in terms of increased lifestyle, I would say. So, but this is a very broader framework. So in the end, you can also go and visit in Italy a couple of times, making your considerations as it progresses. If you are very rich, actually, there is a specific flat tax for you, which right now is going to require 200K per year plus 25K per additional family member. This is the so-called Italian flat tax regime. Long story short, if you are rich for businesses reasons, for inheritance or for crypto, this could be a great opportunity. Why? Because you get for 15 years this special regime, and you are going to pay 0% universally on all foreign income, capital gains, dividends, and so far and so on. Now, maybe if you're listening and you are not above 5-10 million personal net worth, this is not super interesting for you, but I still want to mention something here, which is this special flat tax regime started at 100K per year. Then suddenly it went to 200K. And right now there are rumors or even bills proposed for increasing again the amount to be paid from 200K to 300K. So what does it mean? And this is a bit my kind of overall message for anyone, in this field. When it comes to special regimes, countries, global living, this is a very highly volatile world. And it's like a continuous sliding door, like the movie, right? So eventually, if you wait for 3 months, you lose an opportunity. Maybe a new one will open up. So this is a bit the learning eventually for this perspective. So if you are really high net worth, guys, my personal take is that Italy would give you for 200K right now. And if you actually lock in this regime, you will be ensured that for you, this specific number will remain over 15 years. Well, this is maybe one of the best tax regimes, because it's true, it's not 0% in all considered, because you are still going to pay a fixed annual amount. But, well, compared to Dubai, Hong Kong, and so far and so on, the cost of life is lower, the lifestyle is great, and you have also a stability ensured for 15 years. So these are a bit the two extremes. Repatriati regime, 50-60% exemption on income, flat tax for ultra net worth individuals. And then there is, in my view, the most underrated one, which is for who wishes to retire in Italy. So as long as you have a monthly income coming from a legitimate bona fide pension, you can potentially qualify for a 7% taxation universally on foreign income, including capital gain and dividends. This is very important. And you can retire in Italy. So this regime will last for 10 years, but you need to move necessarily in a southern region, and specifically you need to actually acquire residency in a small village, specifically in a village with less than 20,000 inhabitants, so a very, very tiny place, which I can guarantee you guys, compared to many other countries in the world, it's not a bad thing in Italy, because there are plenty of villages close by larger cities, so you can get services. They can be close to the airport, close to the beach. The weather in the south is objectively very good. Yeah, it can be a bit too hot during summer, but you can still manage it or travel. And you can find for sure the balance that you prefer. Italy, in the end, it's a large country. It's not, for example, Portugal is about 10 million inhabitants. Italy 60, 65, depends on how you calculate the statistics. So these are the three main regimes. If you're a retiree, 7% with conditions. Repatriati, and of course, ultra net worth individuals. If I can tell you just the last one, because I think it's something that nobody knows, and maybe just a few of you could be interested, but if you are a researcher, if you are a professor, or even if you work in R&D for a company or for your own startup, of course, in a legitimate and bona fide manner, for researchers relocating to Italy, there is a crazily good opportunity of getting up to 90% exemption for up to 13 years, depending on a few conditions. So potentially, if you are a legitimate, of course, researcher, you're going to pay 2-3% of taxes for up to 13 years in Italy, which is, of course, massive in my view. And this is, of course, the representation of a country that desires to and aims to attract talent, and in this case, also intellectual capital. So this is a bit the framework that managed to position Italy as a, I would say, very valuable opportunity for those ones of you who seek a tax optimization regime. There are a lot of conditions, of course, and my key message is that I believe all these regimes will soon become less attractive. Eventually, they will be removed, including the flat tax regime, for many reasons. Maybe this is good, would turn into more political considerations, but so my key message for you is that if you have been considering Italy for a long time, it's better to be 3 days earlier than 1 day late.
Yeah, and I'm sure many other users will get interested in Italy, especially this 7% thing, because we have a part of, FIRE community, people already having passive income. Portugal obviously was great with NHR. Now it's a bit more complicated, but Italy, nobody heard about this 7%. So yes, please like this video who's watching us, because you eventually discovered that for you. And can you give us more details? Like you mentioned that, this person should live in that small city, could be near the large city. So in terms of quality of life should be fine. But how do they control, and actually what's the time requirement? Like, can persons spend there 9 months, 10 months, 6 months? Because like in Dubai, I think that they require 90 days. So is there any like minimum they spend? And do they particularly mention that the person should spend time in that small village, or it's Italy in general?
That's a great question, actually. So first and foremost, in general terms, the requirement is you need to acquire the tax residency in Italy. And in order to be considered a tax resident, there are 2 criteria. One criterion is usually to spend 183 days in the country. And of course, the second one is also potentially the center of, life interest of a person. So in general terms, I would say 183 days is what at least by law and formally is required. Now, in terms of effectively spent time in the village, I think this is something I need to look more into in details. But in general terms, when any kind of framework requires you to acquire residency, there is an implied, of course, obligation to effectively actually live and spend time in that specific, region. So I would say that in principle, yes, you should actually spend time in that village. But I would need to double check more in detail. And as always, all of these elements, are a general and informative description. When it comes to your specific case, always seek for, specific legal guidance for the specific lawyer or team that will assist you. With Zerra, we will offer actually Italy from November onwards with a dedicated team, but in general terms, anyone that can actually assist you successfully on this matter.
Yeah, and for our viewers, please write us in comments if you have questions, and if you need more information about the 7%, just write 7 in comments. We'll send you some basic, which already Alessandro described perfectly in his newsletter. And one more question. You mentioned that it's for retirees. I believe Portugal has this D7 passive income, Spain has. So in terms of Italy, and let's make it specific for Ukrainians usually don't have like state pensions. They usually have like private, let's say they use Interactive Brokers and it's just brokerage account. All they have is statement, and that statement can show capital gains and dividends. So how would they, show that they actually have this passive income for retirement if they want to qualify?
Absolutely. This is another great question. I remember when I was writing an article, I was searching for this specific matter. And yes, private pensions do qualify. As always in this matter, there is a certain degree of discretionality in the sense of as long as it's a legitimate and pension, which means there is a recurring monthly or at least periodic income, this should qualify. As always, for these cases, what it's necessary to do is to work with one or two key examples of eventually private companies eventually providing this pension and conclude an analysis. And then, of course, this will become essentially a much simpler job to do. But in general terms, yes, private pensions are absolutely considered as eligible for this regime.
Okay, I guess we answered the basics. And, if somebody is interested in that flat tax with 200,000, as you mentioned, they better do it fast before it goes up. Dear viewers, please like this video. We're going to switch to extending our geography. You are based in Portugal, and obviously Portugal has a lot of advantages and a lot of popularity for its golden visa. I think you mentioned in your newsletter once that it's the best this type of program in Europe, and then they pushed real estate out of it. So is it still the best in your view? And maybe you can connect it to that Bitcoin topic as well.
Absolutely. So as any one of you probably has heard, the Portuguese golden visa has been from 2012 onwards quite, I would say, famous. And there was a reason for it, because the whole country actually made a large bet on this system for attracting capital and qualified actually migrants in the country. And it has been a very successful program. I think it attracts on average, 600 million per year, something like this. As always, when large inflows of money come into a country, there are some additional maybe considerations that have been made, including in Portugal has been subject to a crazily high spike of prices in the real estate market. Just to give you a reference, the same apartment that you could have paid 180K in 2013, probably today is on market at 750, 800K. Okay, just to give you a high-level reference. So this increase of prices created some frictions, and initially the culprit has been deemed to be the golden visa investors. So in 2023, the law changed and they removed real estate as an eligible investment route. So this means that from 2023, you can't anymore invest in anything real estate related and get a golden visa. Just to close up this story, after this change occurred, the real estate market didn't actually invert the trajectory, and actually the prices kept increasing. So what has been proved is that the golden visa was not the responsible for this. Now, when this changed, my wife actually operates in real estate in construction with her own company. She had a prior fund for real estate, and I was in tech. So we had this idea of, okay, what if we unite the two different worlds? And we launched the Bitcoin Golden Visa or Bitcoin Ecosystem Golden Visa Fund. We went viral, and as for now, we are at about 25 million of raise. And our model essentially includes to invest in a local Portuguese company, a Bitcoin company, which acquire exposure to Bitcoin. The company is fully owned by the fund. So we tried to use and optimize this model for tech-oriented or modern investors. We brought down the costs, in a way that we believed to be quite successful for our clients and investors, and this has revealed to be a very successful actually offering. So we created somehow this category, and that's why the company name right now is BCitizenship, which means indeed Bitcoin citizenship. So our mission essentially is to create for tech and modern-oriented investors Bitcoin companies, Bitcoin-aligned funds, in general, Bitcoin-aligned ventures of different kind. And of course, tech companies eventually in different countries doing yielding on Bitcoin and so far and so on to generate transparent opportunities for investors. Of course, all this material should be consulted on the official documentation. There are always risks involved in any potential investment in anything, so always be aware. But with all these disclaimers, put aside, so after this change in 2023, I believe, Ljubomir, the golden visa in Portugal remained a successful one. Why? Because the incredible, in my view, Portugal has been, for this reason, extremely intelligent from a legislative framework perspective, because the Portuguese program require you to spend only 2 weeks every 2 years in the country. And with the current legislation, after 5 years, you can apply to citizenship. So this is a smart route to, on one hand, to require a certain degree of effective residence in the country, but on the other hand, to not require necessarily people to move and or to acquire tax residency here. So it's a good balance. Differently from Malta. Malta was a pure CBI or citizenship by investment program, requiring you to invest, so you put the money and you were able to get a passport. And Malta got axed this year from the European Court of Justice as a program. The Portuguese program is legitimate, is valid, because it's a RBI or residency by investment. So in my view, and according to many in this industry, this program is still active, still valuable. Things will change, actually already changing. This is quite critical to inform anyone about it. The timing for being potentially, upon requirements, of course, capable of applying to citizenship is moving from 5 years to 7 or 10. Once again, this is the demonstration that in this world, every 6 months, every 12 months, things change. So that's why also I try to write constantly about this topic and sometimes to decipher the whole kind of scheme. And so right now, this program is, in my view, probably still the best in Europe. Why? Because it requires you, it's very flexible, minimum stay requirement, 500K of investment. It's a high regulated market. So as always, if you need to make an investment, and again, this is not investment advice, it depends also how serious is the jurisdiction where you send the money. Portugal is Europe, and so far and so on. There are other opportunities emerging. We are with BCitizenship going to launch actually next month the Bitcoin Dolce Visa in Italy. So it's going to be only for residency, not for citizenship, 250K in the Italian Bitcoin company created by us. So we expect this also offering to hopefully find a large market. And we are a bit the innovators in this space, and we try to do our best to comply with the rules, to at our best comply with any interest and transparency degree with investors in a market which not always, I would say, is super necessarily. Let's put it in these terms. Usually this market is not connected to highly liquid ventures, and this created in the past frictions. Let's put it in this way to remain elegant and balanced. Okay, so we try to be instead very, very on the side of the investors and customers, essentially. So This is a bit what we're thinking of. There are other programs coming up. I'm constantly monitoring them. So to recap, for Golden Visa, Portugal, in my view, if you're looking into a pathway through residency, in this case with minimum requirements for citizenship, in my view, it's still very good. When it comes to relocation, it depends on your position, because as you were pointing out correctly, as a paradox, also Portugal, probably you heard of the NHR, right? There was this famous NHR program, it got removed. Now there is a sort of a virtual hair of the system named IFICI. Long story short, right now, pensioners can't be qualified for an exemption in Portugal. So right now, it's a bit particular, the situation, because if you are receiving a pure pension, well, Italy is more advantageous, because on Italy, you will pay 7% universal on pension and foreign income. In Portugal, you're going to be subject to standard taxation tax rates. So this is a bit the kind of duality. It depends on who you are, what's your goal. If you are more interested in investing and in the meantime you live somewhere else, if you are instead interested in moving, these are probably the delicate aspects that you need to consider for yourself. Yeah.
What you're telling us is very interesting, and I'd like to dig into details a little bit on this Bitcoin offering. I did have clients who applied and got Golden Visa, and as you mentioned, not all of them live in Portugal, but it's a way to citizenship. So let me just imagine the situation of my client who would be the resident of Cyprus, the tax resident of Cyprus. Can spend there as low as 60 days, but let's say he spends there 7 months, then he comes for 2 weeks to Portugal, and this client invests in Portugal with you in the Bitcoin fund, 500K, and then probably 7 years, he can apply for the citizenship.
This is what many, in general, investors are doing. And of course, I already made a few disclaimers, and they apply also to what I'm going to say now. But in general terms, yes, you can maintain your fiscal residency anywhere. You can be resident in the UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi. You can be resident in Hong Kong, Singapore, anywhere. And you only acquire the legal, residency permit. In the end, or as always, when you also hear Golden Visa is a marketing name. The legal name in general is always residency permit. So you acquire a permit to reside, but this doesn't carry the obligation to reside. So this means that you can live in Cyprus 60 days, you are Cyprus fiscal resident in Cyprus with conditions. Dubai, UAE, 90 days plus with conditions. Then you spend 2 weeks, 2 months in Portugal. From a fiscal residency perspective, you will not be considered fiscally resident in Portugal, but you will satisfy the requirements for the Golden Visa, correct? And in this case, with the current legislation, after 5 years, you can apply for the passport. In our case, you will invest in this fund on the Bitcoin local ecosystem in the sense of this Bitcoin company, Portuguese-based, paying taxes here and so far and so on. And the additional benefit, to give you also an overview, is that as right now, I think Cyprus is not even yet Schengen. Maybe things will change, right? But UAE for sure is not. You will get also a residency permit in a Schengen country, which is not in the shorter terms. To be very accurate, the program is great. However, I think it's very important to stress that there are sometimes delays. Historically, in 2021, 2022, this program accrued an important delay or backlog. Now things have already improved, and they are improving steadily. But let's put it in these terms. There will be, so we work with the best migration firms in the country. We worked on, at this point, many different cases, some of them very complex, with eventually persons having all their wealth coming from Bitcoin mining, for example. And we successfully managed to make sure that these persons could prove their funds in a legal and lawful manner. So we have been able to work with very complex cases, but as always, expect some delays. So my personal general suggestion is you need to be patient. So when it comes to Portugal, don't think that things will work as if you were in the UAE. It can be. So as long as you know in advance that you need to be patient, you're going to enjoy this experience at best. And honestly, it's an incredible opportunity for many, because you park an investment, of course, with all the degree of risks that I'm already disclosed, but with minimal stay requirement, you increase optionality. And also for your kids, because of course, as you know, citizenship can be easily extended to family members. There are different ways, by the way, to achieve that, even directly in the Golden Visa program or after via reunification and similar procedures or naturalizations. But in general terms, this is also what you need to work with the immigration lawyer upfront when you build your own strategy. Well, the advantage is that your kids will be able to choose where to live, where to work, where to study, most importantly, because if there is something very good in Europe in general is the education system. And the flexibility that the Portuguese program gives you is unparalleled. Just for being complete, I heard that there will be new programs emerging. I don't know to which extent, from Eastern European countries, of Eastern Europe. My personal, and we may be offering future products there, because our goal is to be agnostic. We don't want to identify a few countries or products, oh, they are optimal and something else is not optimal. But personally, having been in this space for a while, my wife has been in this space for almost 10 years, it's important to, in my view, to always factor in your choice the right program who has developed a bit the callus or experience over the years. Because when a program existed for 10 years, this entails that there is going to be an entire system of service providers, case law, handbooks, best practices that can function as guidelines for any actor in the space. When the new country emerges and eventually tries to promote a new program, on one hand, this is very positive and remarkable. But on the other hand, you need to expect that there is not yet a developed ecosystem. And this will mean frictions, unclarity, problems, and eventually markets which are already battle tested. Eventually, you can make sure that if an operator is there, well, it's unlikely that there will be completely unprepared or non-honest operators. New markets, new opportunities, new risk. So this is a bit the balance also when it comes to, and that's why in my view, Portugal will always remain, even if they will increase the years, a good opportunity, because it's a stable opportunity with these problems. You need to be aware of that in the sense of delays. And if they increase to 7 years, to be frank, my prediction is that this program will keep remaining a hot product in the market. Why? Because let's see how the new legislation will define the terms. But if it will, as I expect, after 5 years, you will still get the permanent residency. And then you just need to wait other 2+ or more years to apply to citizenship. If that's the case, in my view, this offering will remain one of the best still in Europe. Italy, the other product we are going to actually have soon in our portfolio, is great, but doesn't give you a pathway to citizenship. So it's an access, it's half of the amount requested in terms of investment. But in order to eventually be able to apply to the Italian citizenship, you need to continuously reside in Italy, for real, as I was mentioning to you for the retirement process. Legally, it's 180 days. Legally, you need to have your non-occasional residency in the case of the retirement in your village, in a small village. For Golden Visa purposes, of course, you can reside everywhere in Italy. So this is a bit the kind of nuances that I think it's important to share. And yeah, in my view, this is a phenomenal opportunity for many families with, of course, as always, caveats and some cons.
Well, I'm sure that will be a point of interest for our viewers. And dear viewers, if you need more information about Bitcoin fund that Alessandro mentioned, please just write BTC in comments. And I have a simple question, but I bet there are going to be lots of questions similar to it. Let's imagine that my imaginary client in Cyprus, and let's say he has 5 Bitcoins. How would he transfer those 5 Bitcoins into your fund in order to get this legitimate investment and start the paperwork?
So we receive this question, of course, hundreds of times, and we are never tired to reply to this question. Although I wish I could reply in a different manner. But the long story short is that the fund can't accept directly Bitcoin. So the long story short and the bottom line is legally, we will need to receive a wire transfer from a foreign bank account in fiat. So unfortunately, you need to have cash out whatever assets you may have, Bitcoin, and then invest in the fund. This is the bottom line of a kind of complex topic. As always, there are many ways and actors and exchanges very reputable ones to, in order to be able to cash out crypto for fiat. We have also a network of operators we can introduce, but I don't believe this is really, in most cases, our investors, they perfectly know how to cash out. So unfortunately, we can't accept directly Bitcoin in Portugal. For Italy, it's preferable, even especially because it's a lower amount, to receive fiat and much simpler. There would be ways legally to be able to invest successfully in a local innovative startup, Bitcoin innovative startup in this case, via Bitcoin, but we made some calculations, and the cost in order to make this possible, including notary fees, auditor fees, they would be very high. So the bottom line is we concluded that we don't feel confident in asking to pay a very high fee for bureaucratic matters and also get into a very tight loop of assessments, auditors, a lot of professionals involved to enable you to do this transaction. To be frank, it's more efficient for you to just convert and invest fiat. But on the Bitcoin company in Italy, which is there are two different breeds and concepts. I can anticipate you a little bit more happily that when after a few years you want to withdraw, and you can withdraw your investment, the company can send you Bitcoin. So you invest in fiat, but the Bitcoin company in Italy, after a few years, when you no longer want the golden visa, will be able to send you Bitcoin, which means we will be able to give you back the investment in kind, in this case, so in Bitcoin.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. It seems since Italy is new, it's going to be, more flexible and, easier at some point. I wanted to ask about Portugal because my experience and my clients, since I'm as investment manager, and there are a lot of reconsiderations for traditional 60-40 portfolios that should include now not just stocks, bonds, and Bitcoins. And let's say the person wants 60% stocks and 40% Bitcoin, or maybe 60% stocks, 20% Portuguese real estate, 20% Bitcoin, some kind of a combination, not to put all money into Bitcoin. So is that possible? Because I know funds like probably your wife's fund that manage real estate. I know just one fund that manages even the equity side, but is it possible to split in other ways?
For the Portuguese Golden Visa program?
Yeah.
So, well, I think it's fair I need to inform everyone. Legally, since 2023 onwards, in order to be eligible for the program, your investment must be happening in funds whose 60% of the assets invest in local companies, and there is only one exception. These local companies cannot deal with real estate. So if someone is promoting you or offering you a Golden Visa program with real estate involved, technically this is not eligible for Golden Visa. So this is a kind of delicate topic. So unfortunately, my advice is to not actually, even if the investment is adjacent, but in the end, the underlying asset is real estate, I invite you to be very careful and to ask your lawyer to do a quick due diligence. And your lawyer will tell you if this investment is going to be okay for you or not. So in theory, you can, Lyubomir, for sure, diversify. You can also find eventually to allocate this 500K among different funds. It's not super advisable because it will increase compliance costs because you will need two different teams doing the KYC, ML, etc. Plus, you will have an overhead in dealing with two different, eventually, fund management teams. But technically, you can do it. It's not so common, but you could allocate 200K and 300K in two different funds. But the problem is, if a fund invests in real estate-related assets, even via companies, etc., ultimately it could create issues. There are some funds investing in hospitality. Once again, I think on this topic, in my view, it would be better if you ask your lawyer to do a due diligence. Personally, I think that in the next few years, there will be some guidelines on this topic, because in the end, if the law is very clear in telling everybody, look, you can invest in every asset except real estate, I think it's legitimate to ask ourselves if these kind of investments will be creating issues down the line.
Oh, thank you for the practical answer. It seems if it's the only capital the investor is 500,000, well, he I'd say he will still need to diversify. But if the primary goal is to get golden visa, it seems it's better not to create additional complexity and just use one fund.
Generally speaking, yes. There are also funds who diversify in other things, like maybe they allocate maybe directly because 40% can be allocated maybe a bit in Bitcoin, a bit maybe in Ethereum or tech stocks, and 60% in local bonds. In the end, on public companies, even in financial or insurance market. So there are different funds. Some of them is potentially very good. The thing is that diversification is always sometimes a good element. They usually have higher management costs and performance costs, so you should also consider by yourself if these kind of numbers make sense for you, and they could. And in my view, it's important that everyone always does the investment based on his own also risk perception. For someone, maybe it's more risky to invest in a specific category of companies. For another person, maybe given his or her background, it's less risky. So everyone should be really free to make their own assessments. But yeah, it can be done. And when you are looking for funds, you can chat with a few of them and you can compare costs. The only recommendation is, but this is valid for any program, in my view, it's a great idea to try to ask for the effective costs, because sometimes, especially when there are not liquid funds or funds exposed to liquid companies, etc., I think it's good to ask for clarity about cost at any level. So you have full clarity, because sometimes you see let's say you want to buy a car, and the car costs 50,000 euro, but for some reasons say that one car has a specific maintenance cost and nobody tells you up front, but you must actually have 5,000, let's say it's a luxury car, per year of maintenance costs. Well, you want to know that up front, right? And sometimes that 5 is not factored in the 50. So you may end up choosing that car over another one costing 60. But then when you look in detail, actually the effective cost you're going to pay over the next 3 years would have made you eventually concluding for a different investment opportunity, or in this case, car opportunity. So this is a bit the story, I think.
I couldn't agree more, because, as a fee-only financial advisor, we deal with that a lot. One fund could offer a high commission, but it's hidden, and the other fund is transparent, and it's very hard to compare. You need a financial person, or I don't know, somebody says AI can do it now, but I'm not sure if AI can go that deep into comparing those hidden costs. But anyway, I fully agree. And we started with Italy. So let's finish with Italy. Somebody gets this residence permit with your new fund. They still need to do with taxes. So on the tax side, they will have to choose from the different regimes you mentioned. You mentioned 4, and that will be the tax strategy to have one of them if they want, right?
Yeah, and essentially, if let's put aside the researchers, which is a very niche, unless you're a researcher, well, maybe you devote your life for research. Okay, in that case, in Italy, please go to Italy. If you're a researcher, you have the best path. Nobody knows. Except this case, if you are very high net worth, the flat tax. If not, the repatriated regime or retirement. So in my view, these two are the probably from a number statistic perspective, the 2 options. In my view, retiring in Italy for 10 years at 7% is a good idea. Of course, you must really have a genuine form of pension, which can be a private pension, but there are some nuances it has to be a genuine pension scheme. It can't be just sort of passive, because if it's purely just passive income coming from, I don't know, investments, well, you're not technically necessarily retired, but maybe it's a more passive investor, kind of structure. And in that case, it's a different visa. But by default, you won't have a specific tax exemption regime for you. And for all these topics, happy to answer to some more questions. My company, Zera, offers all these assistance with lawyers, migration specialists in various countries. The company actually served dozens for relocating specifically to Portugal. Sometimes it's also nice to make comparisons, but we offer also Spain. So essentially, if you like south of Europe, essentially we should be able to help. My bottom line, if I may say, is in my view, there are 2 components, like 2 baskets to consider. Tax, eventually how much you can optimize, but at the same time, there is also lifestyle and future opportunities, because it depends also what you do. Let me give you an example. If you work in tech, I think Portugal can be potentially a good move for you. Why? Because in general, Portugal became over the years a sort of digital hub. In Italy, yeah, Milan works, but Portugal is very international. Also, because in Portugal you can speak English, you don't need necessarily to learn Portuguese. In Italy, you must learn Italian. Otherwise, people won't really, maybe except in a few central areas of a few large cities, Italians don't really speak great English usually. So there are differences. So in my view, if you are looking also for new opportunities, etc., Portugal as a tech hub works. Italy, Milan for finance, of course, or especially if you are more into the retirement phase. Italy, I may be biased, but has the best lifestyle ever in terms of food, in terms of culture. It's glorious. I would say it's fantastic. I look forward to retire in Italy. I hope they won't change the law by then. And Spain, I heard there is the Beckham law. Some people had issues with that regime, but potentially can be also a tax optimized play for a few years. Spain also in terms of lifestyle is fantastic, especially south of Spain, Andalusia, Malaga. It depends also on your preference. So in my view, tax is great, but it's always a portion of a broader kind of set of considerations. And what we are trying to do at Zera is constantly assist persons from A to Z in a continuous manner. So once you're there with the accountancy, for example, and when after 2 years you want to change again, well, we should be able to support you also at that time. Because in the end, we are in this kind of age of optionality and flexibility, sometimes for reasons that we are forced to take into account, like for example for Ukraine, sadly, and in the end, it's very rarely a definitive choice, right? It's always a continuous movement, and I think this a bit this story, I think, of this decade at least, 2020, 2030, in this historical phase. So yeah, I think happy to chat more about this. It depends also on who you are, but all of them can be great opportunities. I will never be bored or tired to remind that in general terms, getting a bit of optionality with a second passport or a second pathway to a residency and then passport can be a good move, as we all know. And yeah, happy to really be of help and expand any topic anytime.
Yeah, Alessandro, thank you for summarizing our talk. And I agree totally. We are a channel about personal finance, investments, tax, but it's much broader decision. And this global living, it's certainly only partly about taxes. But dear viewers, let me summarize quickly. Alessandro has 2 companies. If you need information about Bitcoin Fund, just write BTC in comments. We will leave links to his newsletter, which I highly recommend, and to his relocation company. And if you need more information about Italian tax regime, 7% passive income with conditions, of course, please write 7 in comments. Alessandro, thank you for your time today.
Good. Thank you so much. I really love this chat. I hope to have more. And sorry again for today. My voice is not really this low. It's just I have a sore throat today. So thank you everyone for listening. I hope you can join me in my newsletter. And for any question, I'm really happy to address all of them. Thank you so much.